This, ladies and gentlemen, is the all-new 7th generation BMW 3 Series. In a world that we currently live in where SUVs and crossovers are the flagships and the moneymakers of so many different brands, it does seem a little bit strange that BMW is still developing, still putting resources and money into the compact sedan, where so many people would much rather be looking at the compact SUV alternative. But the new G20 3 Series promises to be the best driving 3 Series in quite a while and back on top in its competitive category. Let's find out how truthful BMW's claims are towards this car, and at the end of the video I'll place it in my ranking system to see where it lies against other compact executive sedans. And this video wouldn't be possible without the help of the Dilawri Group and their Calgary branch of BMW dealerships. They lent this car out to me for a few days so I could review it and share my thoughts with it to you. So without further ado, let's go for a drive. With the 3 Series currently in Canada, we only are getting this car with all-wheel drive. And that is either the 330i, the car that I have here, a 2-litre twin-scroll turbocharged engine making 255 horsepower and 292 pound-feet of torque, or the two upcoming 3 Series, the 330e, which is the plug-in hybrid version, and then the M-Performance M340i. The new 3 Series is slightly longer than the car it replaces. It's built on the modular platform called CLAR that kind of underpins everything from the new X5 to X7 to this car, whilst increasing its rigidity by about 25% and somehow making it even lighter as well. So the interior and exterior design is very much a evolution rather than a revolution, and for someone like BMW that has built so many 3 Series, it's easily identifiable as a car that people buy when they finally come across a little bit of money. Maybe they're a few years into their career and they can buy the status symbol that is the 3 Series. It isn't BMW's flagship by any stretch. There's so many more expensive and larger cars that BMW produces. But the 3 Series, in a way, is the attainable flagship car. The interior of the 3 Series is quite honestly close to flawless. It's hardly a revolution in here, but it doesn't need to be. BMW is constantly finding out a way to evolve their cars. The design language is very familiar to anybody that's been in the previous generation 3 Series. There are so many beautiful materials. You'll still find hard stuff if you go searching lower down in the door cards and the bottom of the central tunnel, but the carpet leads all the way up to that point. The leather is rich, the stitching is wonderful, and in this car we have the wood accents that cover the central tunnel and a little bit of the accent strip up on the dashboard. Open pore wood too, feels great, and this compartment that covers your cup holders and wireless phone charger, look at the motion in that, look at the dampening. Oh, proper quality piece that is. I really think BMW has evolved the interior to eke out that last couple percentage of efficiency, but the one thing that I do take complaint with is that there isn't a button for syncing the dual zone climate control. If you want to do that, you'll have to hit this menu AC button and then it shows up. And for a lot of cars that have ambient lighting, they're systems that you can only see at night. It's part of the ownership experience that you only get to see them in their full glory when it's pitch black outside. But even on a bright and sunny day, you can still see the accents. The reading lights that you have inside have this strafed pattern in them that's kind of reminiscent to the all-weather mats in this car, but at night you have what BMW calls the welcome carpet. It's an interesting puddle light design where the light leads you into the car. The latest iteration of BMW's iDrive system is here in the 3 Series, featuring a new style of rotary wheel and the buttons that flank all around. Instead of them being sectioned by physical buttons, this whole piece feels like one button. You press anywhere to access any part of the iDrive, and the whole thing feels like it pushes down rather than one specific section. This is a 10-inch touchscreen that's tilted ever so slightly towards the driver, and the touchscreen is so good it almost puts the iDrive rotary wheel into complete obscurity. The responses are so quick, you can pinch and zoom on the maps. Everything is fairly logical to find. I think you'll take a couple minutes when you first get into this car to figure out where everything is, but the graphics are beautiful, the colors are crisp, and the response is amongst the best that I've come across in the entire industry. In this 330i, you also have the digital instrument cluster that BMW calls their live cockpit. With this space, you can customize things slightly to change the color or the background you see here. I've constantly got my current position in between the tachometer and the speedo. A friend of mine drew a comparison between this car and something like an Audi. BMW is a lot like Apple, and Audi is a lot like Android when it comes to customization of their screens. You don't have much in this car, kind of like Apple. You can change around some surface level settings. You might get the choice of changing around a few colors, but nowhere near the amount of availability that the Audi offers you with, I think, like 30 different color choices in that car. Speaking of Apple, Apple CarPlay is available with this car, and it's a wireless system as well. But Android Auto is currently absent from the 3 Series, despite there being a function with Android phones that you can use that as the key. So it's a little confusing that you would have one phone to potentially get into the car, but you couldn't use it to interact with the touchscreen. Don't know why they've done that. I'm sure they see that's a little backwards. This 3 Series and some of the latest generations in BMW products has some really clever features though when it comes to reversing. You have the backup camera as standard, as you'd expect. A 360-degree camera system is as well, and you can play around with that system just like you could in the M550i that I had, where it has this 3D rendering of the car that moves around as you move backwards and forwards. What that M550i lacks that this car has though is something called reversing assistant. This is a really clever feature where, say you're negotiating through really tight parking spots, if you're desperate to reverse, you put the car into reverse and a little option comes up here on the touchscreen. You touch that, you let go of the steering wheel, and the car takes care of the steering. You still need to put input on the brake and throttle, but the car remembers your inputs from the last 60 meters, I think it is, to get you out of that sticky situation. This is one of the latest, most significant innovations I think that have ever been put into a car. Now, a BMW has always been a forefront of driving dynamics, and the last 3 Series had a little bit of flack going towards it that it wasn't really exciting, it wasn't really engaging. I can happily report that this 4-cylinder model, the base model of this car, is truly fun to drive. You have a big chunky steering wheel, and in the comfort mode and the eco mode, the car's pretty reserved. It's still involving in that you can feel all of the cracks and the imperfections in the road, but the suspension irons out any of the rough parts of the ride. You actually do have 2 different suspension setups in the 3 Series. As standard, you have a passive system, but going up to the M Sport line, you have an adaptive system, and that's when you can change around how the ride feels. And you'll notice that difference largely from comfort and sport. Now, speaking about sport, this 4-cylinder engine has a fairly decent rumble when you're in comfort mode and you're really putting some energy into it. But when you press that sport button, everything changes. It gets so much louder. The steering gets slightly heavier as well, but you can actually get a lot more road feedback in this mode than I feel in comparison to the comfort mode. You have to listen really closely, but there is a touch of crackling from the exhaust whenever you let off halfway up in the rev range. And I really do think the 3 Series is fun to drive. It is really responsive to your steering. You can see how much the car's moving around now. Seats are excellent. You have a little bit of manual thigh support. So for tall drivers, if you're over 6 foot, and I'm 6'4", this is a godsend. And you actually have the ability to tighten or loosen the side bolsters to hug you a little more if you are doing some enthusiastic driving, but slack off a little bit when you want to have a comfortable and easy cruise. The miles behind this BMW disappear on long highway driving. Perhaps the only thing I don't like when we're strictly talking about the driving experience is the automatic stop-start system. It's far too aggressive. Of course, there's a button to turn it off if it really bothers you, but in situations where I just wanted to do a simple parallel park, the half second that it took for me to take the car from drive and then into reverse the car turned off and turned back on again. It's a bit unnecessary, and for that situation, is it really saving any more fuel? When you get into the rear seats of the BMW, it is fairly tight for me, sitting behind myself. Head is hitting the roof, knees are going up against the back of the seat. I'll have to angle in slightly, but it is nice to know that these are three-way splitting seats. And then when you open up the available hands-free power tailgate, you see all of that is carpeted, and a very substantial sized trunk as well. Yes, the new G20 3 Series is marvelous. It truly is close to a faultless car. There is no major component of it that annoys me or I think they should have done differently. And in such a competitive segment, I think the BMW 3 Series is back on top, making it a segment leader. Even this 3 Series in a marketplace that is dominated by the surge of SUVs. The new 3 Series is more relevant than ever before. And once again, many thanks have to go out to the Dilawri Group and the BMW dealerships of Calgary that were able to make this review possible. All of their information, as well as Dilawri's dealership locator, is listed in the description down below. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you again soon.